Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going on a seriously mind-bending journey to fundamentally deconstruct exactly how you perceive reality. We're going to be using the profound insights of Nāgārjuna's 12-gate treatise to explore two massive, interconnected concepts: the famous phrase, "the map is not the territory," and the Buddhist philosophy of the union of the two truths. So prepare to have your perspective totally shifted, because the way you think the universe works is about to be put under a very intense microscope. Okay, let's dive into this. The famous phrase, "the map is not the territory," is actually the ultimate lens for understanding Nāgārjuna's deconstruction of reality. As humans, we have this really bad habit of committing what's called cartographic reification. Now, that's just a fancy way of saying we constantly confuse our mental models, our maps, with ultimate reality itself. We look at the grid lines we've drawn over the world to make sense of things, and we just assume those lines actually exist out there in the dirt. Consider this for a second. What if the engine of the entire universe, the very concept of cause and effect, is just a mental construct? What if it's not some rigid mechanical law of the cosmos, but actually just a highly useful heuristic model we use to navigate everyday life? Now, if that sounds absolutely crazy, stick with me here. By the end of this explainer, you're going to see exactly why this is mathematically and logically true. Section 1. The map versus the territory. So our understanding of reality essentially breaks down into two truths. On one side, we have T1, conventional truth. This is the map. It includes literally all our perceptions, linguistic designations, dualities, and scientific theories. They're dependently co-arising appearances. And hey, they are incredibly useful and functionally indispensable for navigating life. On the flip side, we have T2, ultimate truth. Initially, we might think of this as the territory, reality as it actually is, completely empty of inherent, standalone existence. But as we'll see in a minute, assuming T2 is the ultimate territory is its own kind of trap. Let's look at the magic trick of causality. Think about a seed growing into a sprout, or, dropping a glass and watching it shatter on the floor. We observe a sequence of events, and our brain automatically projects this inherent, invisible force connecting them. But Nāgārjuna demonstrates that this connection is purely a cognitive grid line. Sure, the seed, the rain, the sun, and the soil are co-evolving and deeply interconnected. They totally work on a conventional level, but none of them possess a standalone, independent power of production. The causal link? It's just a map we've drawn. Section 2, breaking the causal grid. Let's move to and see how this builds across the actual timeline of production. When does a cause actually produce an effect? If we look at the past, the effect is already produced, right? So producing it again is totally redundant. If we look at the future, well, it's not yet produced, so there's nothing there to be acted upon. What about the present moment, the exact instant of being produced? Well, if something is in the middle of being produced, part of it must be already produced, and part must be not yet produced. You just end up with an infinite regression of splitting hairs. The text mathematically proves that an isolated instant of becoming can never actually be located. And if that temporal breakdown wasn't enough to hurt your brain, consider the logical collapse of the causal bridge itself. If an effect is inherently identical to its cause, then production is totally redundant. A seed is a seed, a sprout is a sprout. But if the cause and effect are entirely different and completely separate, then a massive spatial and temporal gap exists between them. No causal link can possibly bridge that gap. Our linear models of time and causality are flawed, contradictory, and honestly, quite absurd when we try to force them to act as absolute reality. Let's apply this to another big category on our map: binary opposites. Take the paradox of light and darkness. Conventionally, we define light as that which eliminates darkness. But logically, light and darkness can literally never occupy the exact same spatial temporal location. Because they can never exist in the exact same place at the exact same time, light never actually makes physical contact with darkness to destroy it. Therefore, this epic cosmic battle between light and dark is just a linguistic construct. It's a relational grid line on our map, not an actual unmediated event in the territory. Section 3. Emptiness is just an eraser. Shunyata, or emptiness, is absolutely not some hidden mystical void. It's not a transcendent ultimate realm hiding behind the curtain of our reality. Rather, it is simply the analytical recognition that all phenomena lack an absolute, independent core, precisely because they arise dependently. Things only exist in relation to other things. Emptiness isn't a place you go, it's a realization of how things function. So the crucial point is this: emptiness itself is empty. Think about that for a second. Emptiness does not exist on its own side. It is a diagnostic tool, a sort of eraser of map clinging. If you reify emptiness, if you treat it as an absolute, ultimate territory distinct from conventional reality, you're falling into a secondary trap. You're merely substituting a coarse everyday map for a more refined philosophical map. Emptiness is the eraser, guys. It's not the whiteboard. Section 4, Union of the Two Truths. Let's look at the master framework here. On one side, we have all our conceptual maps and tools. This includes T1, our everyday conventional truth of dependent origination. It includes T2, emptiness, which we just established is a deconstructive tool or an eraser. And it even includes the union of the two truths itself, which is just a non-dual pointer. Every single one of these things is just a map. So what are they actually pointing to? The other side of the framework, the territory, suchness, tethata. This is unconstructed reality. It's an indescribable flux that is radically beyond all concepts, dualities, and cartographic grids. And this brilliantly illustrates the concept. Think about a reflection in a mirror. Is it there? Yes, absolutely. You can see it perfectly. It functions as a highly useful map, RT1. But does it have a solid, independent reality? No. It relies entirely on the mirror, the light, and the object. It's there, yet not there. This is exactly how you should view every single concept, model, and theory you hold. They are functional, but they entirely lack an absolute independent reality. They are not the territory. Section 5. Resting in tranquil suchness. True liberation, according to this framework, definitely does not mean you have to go and destroy all the conventional maps we use for daily life. You don't have to stop using clocks or forget how cause and effect work when you're baking a cake. Instead, liberation is simply abandoning the exhausting demand that these maps act as an absolute ontological bedrock. You just stop grasping at things as if they're solid, permanent, and absolute. The entire 12-gate treatise culminates in this one final, beautiful thought. All things have no inherent production or origination. Therefore, all things are ultimately empty and tranquil. When both extremes of asserting absolute existence or absolute non-existence lead to logical failure, it means our very framework is flawed. Letting go of this relentless cartographic grasping leads directly to ultimate tranquility. So here is exactly why this matters, and your ultimate takeaway. Realizing the map is not the territory fundamentally frees your mind. It frees you to experience the dynamic, centerless web of conditions exactly as they are. You continue to use the conventional models because they're useful, but you no longer suffer when they inevitably change or fail, because you recognize they were never absolute reality to begin with. You can finally rest in the tranquil flux of thought tathā. I want to leave you with one final provocative question to chew on. If every single concept, word, and duality you use to navigate your daily life is just a map, what happens to your experience of the world when you finally stop holding on to the grid lines? What does reality actually feel like when you let the map go? Thank you so much for joining me on this profound deconstruction of reality. Until next time, keep questioning the map.